I was working, my first grant was with the royalty in conservation. I put in for the grant. I didn't get it. I put in for the grant. I didn't get it. I put in for the grant and I didn't get it. And I went to these two friends of mine who had been mentors for me, Nina Bradley, Nina Bradley and Carl Leopold. Nina and Carl were all the Leopold's children. And I explained to them, I was certain that this thing at the time, we called it, we still believe it is, the ecosystem-based approach to restoration. And we needed someone to sponsor us to show that worked. And Carl Leopold and Nina Bradley stood up for me, and we got the grant. And since then, it is the way that we do things. And it's, you see these, you're driving down the highway or a backcountry road or something like that, and all of a sudden you see this wet spot, this wet area. Sometimes you think, it's just a puddle in the middle of a cornfield. But then you come upon this thing that looks like the part of the landscape. It looked like a puzzle piece that fits in its place. I taught wetland restoration training for several years on real field projects, getting your feet wet and muddy. And the first thing I would do before the class is we had 25 people in a class, and they'd spend a week in the field with us. And they'd be so excited to go. And I'd walk in and say, God, I'm sorry, I'm late. I didn't mean to be late. I said, could you guys help me out? Well, there's 3 or 4 of them at the table, and they say, sure, what do you need? And I dumped out a puzzle, a jigsaw puzzle, 1,100 pieces. I said, do me a favor. Start putting this together. It's important for the class. And if we don't have this puzzle, we can't have a class. And I'd leave the room. Well, these are smart people. And they'd go at this puzzle and at this puzzle and at this puzzle. And I go back, and they'd usually have 2 or 3 inches of the puzzle done. I didn't mention that the puzzle was an 1,100-piece flower garden. Mm-hmm. And I said, okay, you guys, smart as you were, couldn't figure out how to put this puzzle together. Now, if I gave you this and I hold up the box, let's say, if I gave you that picture, it would have been helpful, right? That's what we need. We need to visualize what we're going to put in the landscape. We need to be a part of this. And I mean a part of it. And I got sick and tired of people sitting on their fat butts, not thinking about this. They want to go out, they want to do good things on the landscape, but they're unwilling to take that step. Not everyone. I met many people who are there, who say, what can I do? What can I do to help? Madison, Wisconsin, 3 years ago, had flooding because they've lost most of their wetlands. Mm-hmm. $250 million in damage. $250 million. That is a lot, Dan. I just want you to know. And so that's what we did. Now we took it a step further, and the step further is teaching me something, teaching you something. That's an interesting thing. But what about kids? What about young kids? What about getting them to go outdoors? And the result was we started working with kids in alternative education, project-based learning, and environmentally based charter schools. Mm-hmm. And we took the kids, my wife was the teacher there, and we took the kids on burns, prairie burns, wetland restoration, I'd load them all up at least one day a week, maybe two, and out in the field we'd go. I took them to the Capitol and had them speak in front of the Senate Natural Resources Committee on environmental issues. They researched them. And we know now that they empowered themselves. So many of these kids, we see them all the time. And a matter of fact, they sent me a new sweatshirt. This is our school in Solon Springs, Wisconsin.
Oh, very nice. And I think you're showing them how. I was very charmed by this publicity photo. I couldn't resist. And I'm going to share this on the screen because you're waist deep in you can explain what this picture is because I'm as I try to get back to my Zoom here. Okay. I think I have to look up here to do that screen share. This this is what I decided to do with the publicity. Let's get back. So yeah, that right there. I'm very charmed by that publicity photo. So can you tell us what you're doing in that photo?
Well, well, first of all, it was not my intention to break through the ice there, but I successfully did it.
Mm-hmm.
And the students thought it was the funniest thing that they had ever seen, me up to my waist in ice water. And so I waved at them and smiled, and I explained, this is how things work. So, I felt I wrote a story about my boots. I had a part of that was a story about waders. We have different kinds of boots. You got boots for this, boots for that. And I was working on the West Branch of the Fond du Lac River in Wisconsin, and went out by myself, which is not a good idea in the spring, but I'm full of not good ideas. And I was walking along and I fell through. Well, it was about 10 degrees below zero. And I crawled out on the bank and I was frozen, and I dragged myself back to the truck. And I could barely get the key in the door of that truck to unlock it. I do have a lesson. I learned a valuable lesson. Always buy a truck with a good heater.
Mm-hmm.
So engaging the kids, we've got a girl that was in our first school, River Crossing Environmental Charter School, is now the head teacher at this school in Solon Springs, Wisconsin. And the honest truth is, it's probably the best thing I ever did in my career. I can't tell you how important it was for those kids to realize that people cared what they thought. There was this thing that's Conservation Lobby Day at the Capitol in Madison. I decided I was going to take the school kids. The organizer of the Conservation Lobby Day said, you are absolutely not bringing school kids to the Capitol. I said, nope, now I'm definitely bringing the school kids to the Capitol. And that year, the kids get to pick a different shirt pattern every year. That year, they had pink tie-dye sweatshirts. And I went to a friend of mine who was a senator, actually a guy that I hunt and fish with. I said, here's my problem. I said, there's some folks that don't think these kids should have the opportunity to be a part of this. It's their capital. The senator, at the beginning of the hearing, stopped and welcomed the kids, and they called them to testify before anyone else. It was wonderful. Then the senator said, come on up to my office. We're going to have lunch. And the kids realized that they had power. They could do things, and so I guess that's it. I love taking kids out. I still do. We were just up in far northern Wisconsin, up in the Hayward area. Our kids, they're from two schools, are planting transponders in muskies and monitoring fish species in the Spider Lake chain. It's a wonderful, wonderful program that they're doing. And it's just they're continuing on and they're having a great time.
Sounds like you might miss having that, unless you still do that, you still take kids out because you've transitioned to another career. But is that sort of life over now that you are, or is this what you've been doing since you've been a conservation officer?
No, I'm not done. The opportunities, um, there have to be the right opportunities to present themselves. And the reason is that field days, what we call them, are very involved.
Mhm.
Got to have a lot of gear, and it's all got to be loaded, and it's got to work right. Although I'm famous for walking into our schools. I've worked with lots of schools without announcing myself and having a conversation with the kids. But I'm proud of them. And yes, it's without a doubt the best thing I've done.
That sounds great. That sounds I completely agree that and I watched your video from the Central Wisconsin Festival from last year where you were talking at length, and our patrons can go and find that video. And you tell some really good stories about the experiences your students have gone through. But this gives me an opportunity to transition into the writing, which is what we would like to hear about too. And I was very charmed as well with and I'll bring up the video of a young man who helped with the introduction. And I'm going to play this right now, and you can tell me who this is. Um, Let me do the screen share on this. So, and then I have the YouTube video up right here. All right.
My final words before Jeff takes the microphone are read his books, Figure Eight, Spider Lake, Bow Cutter, and the new one, Musky Run. In other words, if you want a book with a ton of violence and a guy who rides on trapeze with a machine gun in each hand shooting up the town who says swears, don't read Jeff's books. Anyways. And finally, the man you've been waiting for, Jeff Nania.
That is how I learned your name. I was looking for videos that would help me with the pronunciation.
I don't know who that kid is. It must be somebody we found at a bus stop. No, when he was about 5 years old, I was speaking in Green Bay at the podium, and it was a wonderful thing. And when the talk was over, I was walking down to sign at the table and was talking to people on the way. And I got down there and I looked, and he was sitting at the table with a pen. He said, "What are you doing?" He said, "I'm signing books for people." I said, "You are?" He goes, "Yeah." And this woman walked up, "Would you sign my book?" He said, "Yes, I'd be glad to." And he'd sign the book.
So I was assuming that it was one of, a grandkid or a
He
nephew, but
could be a grandchild, but I ended up with him, and it was a blessing. He's been a wonderful thing for us. And
you have a fan who hasn't graduated middle school, it looks like. All right. So with that introduction, I was just wondering, wow, okay, it's good to have those young fans, I suppose. But so tell me about the transition from conservation officer to being a writer. And we can go over the writing process, and then after that, we can dive into the story a little bit. How did you decide to kind of transition your life from conservation to writing?
It I was writing when I was doing conservation work. I had lots of different um, formats and opportunities to write about wetlands and conservation kids, and it fits right into what I wanted to do. You know, I love to read, and if you looked here in the office, you'll see books everywhere. And a strange things just happen. Pieces fall together. So my family, my dad was hunting in Sawyer County, Wisconsin, with a friend of his long before I was born. They were grouse hunting, and they were looking for a place to stay that night. And the guy said, "Well, from gas station," said, "Go down the road here. There's a cabin." The guy rents out the cabin, and he'll put you up for the night and probably feed you breakfast. So my dad and his friend stayed there and got up in the morning and had breakfast. And they looked out, and this cabin was on a beautiful lake. Not, you know, lakes that you don't find anywhere but in the North Country. And the name of the lake was Spider Lake. So my dad had one child at that point, my older brother, and he said, "You know, I'd like to bring my son back here and my wife." I said, "Okay, that's just what I want. I want people to come back here and enjoy this." It started a tradition that has lasted 77 years. My family has gone back to this place every year for 77 years. Now we own most of the cabins, and my brothers, I have two brothers left, they come with their families too. But I would read a mystery book or find a mystery book from a local writer and buy a case of them, and I'd give them out to everyone to read together. And one year she was not writing a book, and I sat down and wrote Figure Eight. That's it. That's what I did. And I showed Figure Eight to my wife, and she really liked it. And so that's it. That's 5 books ago.
What's the appeal of mystery to you? That's your preferred genre. Is it something that you can just curl up with and kind of relax with, or is there something else that appeals to you?
Oh, I like to trick myself. I got a phone call the other day from a retired FBI agent. Now, I want you to know, I have a lot of helpers with these books. One guy is a medical examiner, and this retired FBI agent called me up and he said, I was very disappointed in the book Bow Cutter because there was a spoiler. You spoiled it. I said, I did. He said, yes, you did. I said, you didn't read the whole book. He said, oh, yes, I did. I said, no, you didn't. Try reading it again and read it down to the last page. He called me back and he said, you got me. And I love tricking myself. I love figuring out how things could have happened. If you want somebody who's swinging through downtown by his teeth with a machine gun in each hand and spraying the neighborhood, don't read my books. If you want to hear profanity for every other word, If you want all those things, don't read my books. I don't feel that's necessary to make it a good story. Figure Eight has got a couple of curse words in it, but there are none others in the rest of the series.
Was writing something that you thought about since you were younger? Is that something that you might have considered as a career when you say were a teenager?
I would say no. The only creative writing course I actually ever took was police report writing.
It
And
sounds like me with journalism news ed, and I said this is not very creative at all. I think I'd rather write fiction.
yeah, no, I think that if you talk to people who know me, and they would have to say they don't know why I do anything. I don't even know why. But I do know this, that I get to the opportunity to be productive and to reach out to people, and they enjoy my books and I enjoy them enjoying my books. And, that's worthwhile. It really is.
When you approach a book, is it your goal for your audience is to just be a diversion, or is there something that you want to say in your books? I think you've kind of incorporated your previous careers in law enforcement and conservation. But or is it a balance of those two, diversion plus something that you want to say? Which what I'm trying to say is, what's your goal? Is it one or the other or both?
It's both, but I want you to read my book
Mhm.
and think about how wonderful it would be to go wading in Spider Lake, go fishing, hike the Ojibwe Trail. I mean, there are so many things. And in my books, these are places that I've been, these are things that I've done, and I've thoroughly enjoyed them. And I just think that that's what I want. I want to give that to someone. I want them to understand, or at least give it a chance.
All right. Well, we can move on to your character, John. You actually said in another talk that he is a friend of yours, and
He
me
is.
being not here, no. When I was watching, I think it was the same video where you were introduced. Um, and I've done some writing, and I can tell you that when the moment a book comes alive when you're writing it is when the characters feel real enough that you know them. Um, So when was that moment where John came alive to you while writing Figure Eight? Was it at the beginning of the process? Was it towards the middle or at the end or during rewrites?
It would be very hard to tell you when exactly, but it happened almost instantly. I began to tell a story, and I told the story, and it involved me, and it involved all sorts of people, this eclectic group of people in my life. And I told our story, and I told our story in a way that gave it some importance. And I like John Cabrelli to start with. He's a good guy. He's the kind of guy that you want to come and help you when you got trouble. He's the kind of guy who will drive 100 miles an hour, never met you before in his life. You called him and said, 911, I need help. He'll drive 100 miles an hour to help you. And that's something that law enforcement has had a tough go of things the last few years. But most of the people in law enforcement are just who you want. And that's what John Cabrelli is. And John Cabrelli, the people he's with, his friend the bear. You know, I use it's sometimes I use these names that are well, they're a little bit close, but the governor, the DA and figure eight, last name is Boyle. And the governor at that time felt that was too close to his name. I told him just to get over it.
The book figure eight starts out with sort of a tragic situation, an officer involved shooting and a death. Is that based on a true incident, or I know it's something that has been in the news, and I know the book was published in 2019. So yeah, that was in the middle of very publicized national news about it. But was it specifically based on something that you may have read about or uh, forbid experienced as a police officer when you were younger?
It was based on a broad base of experiences that people had faced. And the question I asked in that book in figure eight, when the tragic officer involved shooting occurs, I asked people who were critical. I said, what would you have done? Tell me what you would have done. Because if you have a better solution, you need to share it. You know, let's put this in perspective. So you're laying in bed tonight, 3:00 in the morning, you hear glass breaking. You look down the hallway and there's a hand coming in trying to unlock your door. You get on the phone, call 911, and dispatcher sends a car or two, burglary in progress. That person that's coming, somebody's uncle or somebody's aunt or somebody's mother or somebody's father, just another person like you and me. But they're coming. Now they get there and they see this person by the front door of your house. There were townhouses, so all of them looked the same. The officer walked up and said, "Let me see your hands." And the guy in the darkness of the entryway spins around and he has something in his hand and points it at the officer. What you going to do?
I think I've thought about stuff like that too. Yeah, I mean, it's a tough situation, definitely.
Well, guess what? That happened to me. And that kid, his parents were out of town for the weekend, and he had too much beer to drink. And he got confused about whose townhouse was whose. And the only thing that was in his hand was an empty beer bottle. How long do you think he had to make that decision? 10 seconds? 15 seconds? And so when we did, you know, we go through this whole process of learning. And every time you have an experience like that, it sticks with you. You know, they don't ever go away. And that's the truth of it. So I put in figure eight things that were real. And it wasn't to cause somebody any anxiety. It was just to put them in somebody else's place. So
I think as a writer, being, there's some therapeutic um, purpose in kind of taking events from your life or events from people you know and exploring that on the pages. I've done that many times, and there, I think there's something we can learn if when we present this to an audience. That's part of the storytelling process, and we can impart that maybe it's wisdom onto our audience and then learn something about it ourselves. Um, with John, I get the sense in the first few pages that he doesn't really know who he is, and it takes a little change of scenery to get his character arc jump started. Is that kind of something that happened to you as you've gone along, or have you been very prepared to move from the transitioning through these careers?
no, I'm not prepared at all. It's not
Hmm.
like I planned it. It just happened that way. I mean, here's the scoop, Dan. I told you before, I don't know why I do anything, but I'm so happy with the things that I've done. I'm so happy that I've been able to make a tiny difference. I was talking to a group from the Natural Resources Conservation Service just last week, and they were kind of dumped because the conservation programs are being cut. And I said, you guys, listen to me. Someday, someone is going to thank you. Every little bit you do means something. So, John Cabrelli, he's a good guy. He's a good guy. And I'm glad to know him. His partner, the bear, who lives in Florida now, after 21 years as a commander of the tactical unit, I relentlessly use him as one of the characters in the book, and he enjoys it.
All right. Well, we've gone on for almost 40 minutes. I know we had some technical difficulties. So if you wanted to wrap this up right now, that's fine. Where can people find your books? Go to your website. I think we can put a screenshot into the recording when it goes up on YouTube. Where can people find your books?
Virtually every bookstore, Barnes and Noble, any place like that, Amazon.
Mhm.
We spent a lot of time with small bookstores. We enjoy that relationship, and they have supported us. You can get our books any place that they sell books. But I would say the small independent bookstores are a great place to come to. Go ahead.
And our website.
Oh, and our website that my wife is. And you can go on as long as you want. I'm sorry that we got a slow start. I hope that if you have things to ask me or things that you want to discuss with me, that we can do that. And if there are any questions from the people who are there, I'll answer their question. And actually, if they ask me a hard question, I'll just make something up.
Okay. I'll turn to I'm gonna look at chat right now because it's on the big screen, but I will turn to my patrons in the room and see if they have any questions. Did you have any questions for Shirley?
Where exactly does he live?
Okay, the question from Shirley is, where exactly do you live, Jeff?
We have a farm in rural Columbia County, and we have a cabin on Spider Lake, Wisconsin. I'm not much for being cramped up. I like having some space. And so that's where I am.
All right. And if you're in chat, you can, if you have a question, you can just type it in. I have it on the screen right here, and then I can ask it of him. Are there any other questions from the patrons that are here? All right. Any questions from chat? I've got a few pages of notes, so maybe there was something that I missed, and I know I didn't record your first response of your being a police officer. Do you want to tell the story if we have time? Do you want to tell a story about the monkey in the tree? I thought that was very amusing, and it would be a good
Oh,
way to end this.
so when I was a little boy, I was playing in the backyard of our house, and I looked up in this oak tree, and there on the oak limb was a monkey. I ran in the house to my older brother, Jim, and I said, Jim, in the backyard, there's a monkey in the tree. And Jim gave me a good whack and said, there's no monkey in the tree, stupid. Now get out of here. I went back. There was the monkey in the tree again. And so I called him, really? There's a monkey in the tree, really? He came out. He said, there better be a monkey in the tree. And sure enough, there was a monkey in the tree. And what had happened is Vilas Park Zoo, the monkeys had escaped. And they were all over through the trees in South Madison. There were monkeys everywhere. It was like a kid's heaven. They were monkeys running. They'd run across the road. They'd climb the tree. They'd scold you. Oh, it was so much fun.
And then you, that particular tree, went to visit later, and what happened when you visited?
Well, the tree ended up being cut down. It was the 11th largest bur oak tree in Dane County, Wisconsin. And so the lumber from the tree, I mean, this was a major undertaking. We did that with the people who had bought the house, and we had to get a crane to lift the tree trunk out of the yard and load it on a semi. And a furniture maker, an artist actually, took that lumber and turned it into rocking chairs for each family. And so we have these wonderful rocking chairs that are part, just another part of things. Our family was really, they not, life and things were different. In the Greenbush neighborhood, it became a tragedy when some people from Madison decided that the Greenbush needed to be removed. And they came to the people who lived there and said, here's your check. You have 30 days to move out. My grandfather could not understand that. Could not. He came to this country. He was Sicilian. He couldn't understand it. He could not believe that somebody could take his home. But they did. Not just his, everyone's. And it was a lesson that we never really learned. It's not okay. And I think that was an important part of my life. We were little kids, but we also know that my grandfather died of a heart attack over this. Now, my grandpa was a good guy. He was a good guy. He was what you call a prohibition entrepreneur.
A
And
bootlegger.
well, you would call him a bootlegger, or I would call him a prohibition
Okay.
entrepreneur.
Mhm.
He bought a bar in downtown Madison called the Ideal Bar that's still there. It's a great picture of my dad, Vincenzo, with his brother Nunzio standing in front of that place. And I can't imagine. But they gave a lot to the community. And the community was taken from them. And, you know, there are people, well, it's Madison, so pretty soon they feel bad about what they did. Then they'll reconstruct something and so they had this. You got a minute to hear a good story?
Oh, sure, go right ahead. I'm going to put the a picture of the ideal bar up on screen so we can.
If
There's
there's two curly
facts.
haired, dark haired boys in front of it,
Oh,
that's Uncle Nunz.
that's still the kid
Yep.
from. It's actually from Google Maps, unless you have a picture on your website.
No, I don't often share this story.
Okay. We'll take it off of share. All right, there we go. All right, well, there's the bar right there.
So they had a regular beer bar and sandwiches in the upper floor, and downstairs they had everything else that you could want. But Madison always wants to make up for what they should have done. So a few years ago, they decided to launch this effort to remember the Green Bush. Most of them never remember anything. And the Green Bush was bulldozed, and it was a tragedy. I mean, there's a photograph of the church being bulldozed. And so the city said, we're going to hire a sculptor to put a statue up to commemorate the Green Bush. We're going to put tiles all around it with the addresses of people and their names that lived in the Green Bush. So this was a big thing. I mean, and there's these guys, they hang out at a shoe store on South Park Street. They sit there, been sitting there for many years. George Fabian's shoe store. And they discuss and straighten out the world. So they're kind of like the elders. Well, the Green Bush was gone and the big thing was coming, and the people on the news and all sorts of stuff. They put chairs out. The number one Dean Martin impersonator in Wisconsin sang songs, and they got down to this sculpture underneath a canvas. And all the elders were sitting in chairs front row. And the mayor pulls the string off this sculpture. And the crowd is silent. I won't say exactly what they said, but they looked at everybody and said, what is that thing? Hey, what is that thing? I don't know what it even looks like. What is that supposed to be? And God, these old Italian men just going on. And they were so proud of themselves. And they never mind that the only place they could find it was by Sinico's junkyard, was the only place they could put the structure that somebody hadn't claimed before. But besides the fact that the food is really good, and they got recipe books on the Greenbush neighborhoods, but it's just something that's really personal to my family, and a lot of people. My cousin Becky is listening to this, and Cindy, you knew about this, and it doesn't go away. You know what those guys did to me once? So I was given when I was in conservation, I was a bipartisan advisor to the Senate and Assembly. Democrats, Republicans, whoever, I offered them, and I did a lot of that work, lots and lots of it. And so I was getting ready to testify in front of the Senate Natural Resources Committee, and I stopped by this bakery called Lane's Bakery, where all these old guys go every day and they get a cup of coffee and a donut. So I'm in line talking to them, and they're going and going and going. So I come up to the counter, and I said, "How much?" $34. I said, $34 for a donut and cup of coffee? And all these old guys waved to me. "Yeah, Jeff, thanks a lot. I appreciate the coffee. Thank you." As they went out the door to sit at the shoe store. So there's just charm in that.